When you believe that you have failed in an area, you will thereafter tend to avoid that area. This is why people give up. This is why people start on a journey and then stop and they don't really know why or remember why. It's just because of an accumulation of failures. When you believe that you failed doing something, you set out a certain task, you say, this is my goal, I want to accomplish this. Okay, what's the gradient that I need to go on to achieve that goal? You start on up along the gradient, you have some sort of a failure, you attempt to do something and you don't quite make it, you don't quite do what you attempted to do. So people call that a failure, so you say, okay, I failed in that area. Now, whenever you look back at that area, you're going to be reminded of that failure, right? That's going to make you tend to avoid it because there's a natural penalty built in there for looking back at that gradient, looking back at that goal. You're going to say, okay, well, every time I look there, I tend to feel bad a little bit because I'm reminded of my failure. I don't want to look at my failures. I don't want to be concerned with my failures. So I'm going to now do something else. I'm going to change my tactics. I'm going to change my goals, and I'm going to move over and go on some other gradient path. I think that's a mistake. I think you shouldn't do that, and I think there's no reason for it. Failure is not a real thing. Failure is a mental construct that you were told exists, but does not actually exist. Failure is a mentality, it's a mindset, it's a way of looking at the world, and it's a very inefficient, very poor way of looking at the world. Anytime you're taking action in the direction of a goal that you want to achieve, you are succeeding. If you're taking action at all, you're succeeding. Why? Because these things that we call failures, where we set a goal, we don't achieve it, and we call that a failure, that's not a real thing. If you're moving in the direction of your goal, you're succeeding. Even if you don't achieve exactly what it was that you wanted to achieve, okay, so what? Just take more action. Just keep taking action towards your goal. See, because here's the thing. Nobody wakes up and just starts succeeding. Nobody sets a goal and just all of a sudden, boom, starts succeeding. That's it. They decided to succeed, and now from now until the infinite future, that person just succeeds at everything they do. That never happens, right? In the real world, failure always precedes success. No one wakes up and just starts succeeding. There are always failures in place before you succeed. I would even go so far as to say that failure is a prerequisite for success. You need to fail so that you can succeed. Because nobody is just going to start succeeding right off the bat. You have to learn, you have to take time to make mistakes, see what works and what doesn't work. So there's always going to be failure before there's success. So if that's the case, then how could there ever really be a failure, right? If you need failure in order to succeed, if it's a necessary ingredient for success, then how could you ever fail? You see? You could never really fail because every failure that you have is just one more step in the direction of success. So it's actually just part of your success. So you never want to look at, okay, well, I failed in this area, so now I'm going to stay away from it because it's, it's negative, bad energy, you don't want to deal with that. Every failure is just a smaller success. It's never really a failure. When you look at failure that way, now you no longer have the problem with failure. You no longer have this idea of, oh, well, I need to now avoid this area that I failed in. Well, no, you took action in that area. That means, guess what? You're closer to your goal than you ever were before, regardless of how big the failure was, right? Because you learned from the failure. You're going to move forward from the failure, right? Now you know, okay, well, at least now that doesn't work. I know it doesn't work. So let me try something else. Let me try something new. Or maybe in your failure, you learned what did actually work. You say, okay, well, I failed overall, but I could take this little chunk of it and say, okay, well, this was the successful part of that, so let me continue on in that direction now. So always take a look at your failure as just a lower gradient success. All your failures are actually successes, but just on a smaller scale. They're just lesser successes. And again, because they lead to success, right? You can never have success without failure coming before it. So take on that mindset and just understand that you don't need to avoid an area just because you failed. And in fact, it means that you're heading towards success and you're actually more successful in that area because of your failures than you would be otherwise if you had taken no action at all in that area.